Okay, welcome everyone. This week's Parsha is Parsha's Vayeira. Anyone know what Vayeira means? It means, and he appeared. It's God appearing to Abraham. And so this is the revelation of God to Abraham. And so as everything that we learn, we're going to talk about revelations and how we can have our own appearance of God, so to speak, in our own lives when we try to do what Abraham was doing. So God appears to Abraham, and this is after he just had his Brit Milah, and it's the third day after his Brit Milah. Abraham is feeling like he was feeling sick. He wanted really to have guests. Now, I don't know about you, but when I'm sick, I'm not in the mood of any guests. Like, stay away. But being Avram who he was like really wanted guests. So God appears to Avram to heal his sickness, because Avram was sick after his bris milah, and then he's like, being Avram who always wants to have guests, he's looking around, and there's three men who appear, who come to him. They look like they're three men, and they're travelers. And Avram's all excited because now he can have the guests that he so desired. So he's in the middle of talking to God, and these three men appear. And we're going to talk about that. He's in the middle of talking to God, and these three men appear, and he says kind of like, well, there's two explanations on this, but he sort of says, my master, could you please wait for me? And so some commentaries explain, Rashi has two different opinions on this. One opinion says he's talking to the people that are there. He's addressing the biggest one of them, the most important one of these three men. And he's saying, just please wait, come to me, come to see me. But Rashi gives another explanation, and he says that Avram is actually talking to God. And he's saying, my master, please wait while I attend to these individuals. And that's a pretty big thing to say to God, right? Okay, so let's put it into perspective for a moment. Imagine, you finally get this breakthrough that you're finally talking to someone who you waited for months and months to have an appointment with, right? Someone who's going to change your career, or someone who can really put you on the right way, or some big personality that you really, really wanted to speak to. And as you're talking to him, your phone rings, and it's like some nudnik teleprompter, or it was just trying to, some real nudnik on the phone. And you say, hold on, sir, I just need to take the call, right? Who would do that? Of course you wouldn't do that. What kind of person would do that? Or imagine in those days you're talking to the greatest king that there is, and again, this homeless person comes walking past. You're in the audience with the king, the prime minister. Imagine, or in today's times, you're talking to Kate Middleton, or to the King of England, King Charles, or the president. Well, I don't know if the president, sometimes we like him, sometimes we don't, so let's not go there. Someone really some star, some star that you really look up to, and some homeless person comes straggling by, and you say, hold on, sir, or hold on, ma'am, I just have to prepare some tongue and mustard for this homeless person, which is what Avram does. He says, hold on, God, and then he goes running to prepare 3 sets of tongue with mustard for his guests, because there's 3 guests. Maybe each of them are going to want a whole tongue. Who knows? So, this is what Avram does. So how is it possible that Avram, the great Avram, can do something like that? So imagine if this person who you were waiting to speak to, this person who could really change your career around, right? This person who's so important, and you were waiting months for him. Imagine if the person who's calling you or asking you is not just a homeless person, but someone who is the child of that important person. Then all of a sudden the equation changes. Or imagine if this person of royalty, who you're finally meeting, his child is tugging at you and saying, do you have something for me? Do you have a candy for me? Imagine then stopping to speak to the royalty to take care of his child. Then this royalty or this important individual would not be upset with you, but to the contrary, they would feel, wow, look at how he's treating my children. And that's really the lesson that we learn from Avram, that we learn that every person is God's child. And so when Avram stopped and says, God, hold on a second, this irreverence that he's showing to God is really the greatest reverence that Judaism has, that Judaism teaches us, that God wants you to stop talking. And this is where our sages say, what is greater than actually having the divine presence, speaking with the divine presence, is having guests, hosting guests. Haknasas archem, hosting guests is even greater than that. Meaning when you are taking care of God's children, then that is the greatest act of divinity, of godliness, of greatness that you could possibly be doing. And God is not offended by that, because to the contrary, you're taking care of his children. And that's what this little episode with Avram actually shows us. But we're skipping ahead a little bit. So God is appearing to Avram, and we're told this is the third day of his Brit Milah, and he's feeling sick, and that's why God is visiting him. God is trying to do the mitzvah of Bikur Cholim, of visiting the sick. And when this passage was read by a little young boy, his name was Reb Sholem Dov Ber, but he was a little kid at the time. He went on to become the 5th Rebbe in the Lubavitch dynasty. But when he was like a little kid, he heard this passage that God appeared to Avraham, and he says to his grandfather, who was the Tzemach Tzedek, the Menachem Mendel of Lubavitch, he says to him, he started crying. He says, God appeared to Avraham, but God never appears to me. Now this sounds so sweet, right? This little kid is saying this little, 4 or 5-year-old kid is saying, God appeared to Avraham, but he doesn't appear to me. And he was really saddened by that. And his grandfather said to him, well, when you are a person who's already 99 years old and you've achieved so much and you still want to do more, Avram wanted to circumcise himself, right? You're ready to circumcise yourself, meaning to even do more for God, then that is when God could appear to you. That's when you can see God. And this little exchange between them really teaches us so much about how we should be looking at life and our attitude to our world. Our attitude should be, this little 5-year-old is striving for the stars, right? He's striving for the ultimate. He's like upset. Why isn't God talking to me? And we too should feel that way. We should truly feel like we want that relationship. We want that closeness with God. Almost that like expecting it. That how's it possible that God isn't talking to me? And yet at the same time, we see that Abraham, who was a man of 99 years old and constantly growing in his spiritual achievements and divine consciousness, and yet he did not feel that he ever arrived. So there's this two-pronged aspect where we reach for the stars, where we're hoping for the highest revelation, where we're hoping for the greatest things, at the same time as we are working on ourselves more and more and saying we have never really achieved the ultimate. So we're striving for the stars, but at the same time we're realizing that wherever we are, there's more to go. As much as we've done, there's more to go. Now it's interesting that it says, this is a little Kabbalistic now, we're going to get a little Kabbalistic just for a moment. The Talmud teaches us that there's 50 gates of wisdom. And that means that there's 50 different steps towards a consciousness and an understanding in your life. So throughout our lives, we always have like different experiences, different studies, different events that happen. And through each of them, we're growing. We're growing higher and higher. And hopefully we get to these 50 different levels of understanding or consciousness. Now it says that once the person can only achieve 49 of these levels on their own. The 50th level is a present from God. So we strive and we strive. It's like anytime you have like an episode in your life, an experience in your life, you have a difficult experience, you grow from it. And not only do you grow, but you really grow in so many different levels. So we don't consciously count these 50 levels, but there are these 50 levels. 49 of them we can achieve on our own. The 50th one is granted to us from God. This is why we have, anyone know that we have, what do we have that are a 50-day and 49-day count? The Omer, exactly. From Pesach until Shavuot, there's 49 days. And those 49 days are these 49 days of self-refinement, of trying to prepare ourselves and grow and get ready to actually accept the Torah. The 50th day is Shavuot. That is the present from God. That's the 50th level that God gives us as a gift. Now, once a person reaches the 49th level, it says that and here we can see how, whenever we look at anything in reality, there's a physical reality and a spiritual reality. The Rebbe always taught us that if there's an ailment or something lacking in the physical realm, we should always look at something that we can do extra in the spiritual realm. So, for example, if someone is seeing things happening in their lives that are not going so well, sicknesses or things like that, what we say is, let's check the mezuzot, because the mezuzot are protection. And if we're not checking the mezuzot, maybe something's wrong with our mezuzah and it's not protecting us the way that it should be. Just to go a little off, I'll give you a little story of what happened. I don't know if I've ever told you this, but when my oldest son was very young, he was like maybe a little boy of 2 years old, he kept catching one flu after another flu, stomach viruses. And I kept taking him to the doctor, who kept saying, it's just a stomach virus. There's nothing you can do. It's just bad luck. He keeps catching one after another after another. One went away. He got better. Bang, he got another one. But this poor little kid, he was 2 years old, and he was just like, it looked like he was almost withering away, because it was a few months in a row that he just kept one stomach virus after another. And at the same time, I remember, I think I was pregnant at the time with 2 little kids and plus pregnant with a third. I remember at the same time my husband was putting up a menorah, and he was taking down the big public menorahs that we put out. And as he was taking it down, he fell on the ice in Toronto and broke his foot. And I said, hold on, there's just too much things going on. Let's check our mezuzot, because that's what the Rebbe always taught us. Check your mezuzahs when you see things that are not going. And we checked, and in the mezuzah, in one of the mezuzahs in the house, the words of the Shema are in the mezuzah, and in the words of the Shema, there was the word v'achalta, v'savata, you will eat and you will be satisfied. In the word and you will eat, v'achalta, in the lamed of the letter v'achalta, the leg of the lamed was broken off. And that kind of just explained everything, because as soon as we fixed the and you will eat, my husband's foot healed, and my son miraculously never got the stomach virus again after that. So in Judaism, we believe that everything is a conduit, a physical conduit for something spiritual. And when that conduit is blocked, we are not getting the spiritual flow. We're not getting that spiritual flow. So we go right to the source and we try to rectify whatever is the spiritual counteract. And that's why we'll do things like giving tzedakah, or like giving charity, or like checking your mezuzot, or anything that we can do when something isn't going well in our life. We'll right away turn to the spiritual part of it. So Kabbalistically, it says that when a person reaches the 49th level, as far as they can go, right? They've done everything on their part. They've done everything that they can achieve, and now they're waiting for God's gift. Once they reach that 49th level, they become lovesick. This sickness that of this tremendous love for God, because they want to now reach even higher, and they can't go any further. They've already done whatever they can do. So they're on the 49th level, and they've reached as far as they can, and now they become sick in waiting, spiritually sick, and waiting for a stronger and deeper level of attachment to God. And that's what the Kabbalah say is why Avraham got sick. So physically he got sick because of his Brit Milah. Spiritually he got sick, he wasn't well, because he was feeling he already reached that 49th level with the Brit Milah, that he waited for God to command him. And now he's waiting for a deeper level of connection, and that's the 50th level, and that is the Vayeira, the Hashem, God appearing to him and saying, okay, this is the higher connection even that you are now ready to absorb and to welcome. So that's the 50th level that he is reaching. So God is speaking to him, and then these three men come, which really are angels, we're told, angels that look like men. And these three men came, or these three angels came for a specific purpose. We're told that angels are not like people. We're multi-dimensional. There's so many facets of our beings, and that's why we can do so many different things. But angels are very one-dimensional. And therefore, a one-dimensional angel can only do one task. So an angel that comes to heal can only do healing or saving. The angel that comes to destroy can only do destruction. And the angel that comes to give news can only do that. And that's what these three angels were tasks with. One was the purpose of telling Avraham that he would have a child, that Avraham and Sarah would have a child. The second was to tell Avraham that about the destruction of Sodom and to actually destroy Sodom. And the third one was to heal Avraham and to save his nephew Lot. So these are the three things that are happening with the angels. And so Avraham is given this Avraham and Sarah are given this phenomenal news that they will have a child. And again, remember, Avraham is already 99 years old, Sarah is 89 years old, and they're told at this age they're going to have a child. That by this time, the following year, they would be blessed with a child. So what does Sarah do when she hears this news? She laughs. It's like, sounds completely like unbelievable. And who's saying it? It seems like just regular men are saying it. She had no idea that these were actually angels of God who are saying it. So we can understand her laughter, but immediately after she laughs, she feels that she becomes rejuvenated. It says she got her period again, which she had stopped getting. It says she became like youthful again. So she feels this change in her body, and she realizes, oh, this is a change that I haven't experienced in many years. This is really happening. I became more youthful. And eventually, when this child is born, a little later in the Parsha, we know that she names this child. What does she name him? Yitzchak, from the same word, tzachok, laughter. So let's talk a little about laughter and jokes, because they say that the Jewish people is really the biggest joke that ever existed. Why are we the biggest joke that ever existed?
All the stuff we've gone through, and we're still here.
Exactly, the fact that we're still here. Let's think a little bit of what makes something a joke. Why do we laugh? When do you laugh at something? What's the ingredients for a great joke?
When it's funny.
When it's funny. What makes it funny?
The way somebody's telling it, or the timing the person has in telling the joke.
Good. And that the joke is going like a certain direction, and then all of a sudden, a twist, something unexpected, something completely unexpected. And everyone laughs, right? Mm-hmm. So you might have an adult acting like a child, and everyone laughs, or a child saying something like that. An adult would say, everyone laughs because it's funny, it's so unexpected. Or a story that's being told, and all of a sudden there's this ending that no one expected. And so you laugh because it's so unexpected. So this is really what makes a great joke. And what makes someone have a great sense of humor, that they're able to see things from a different perspective, that they're able to kind of put in this change, this twist that is so random and so completely unanticipated. This is really what the Jewish people are all about. We take a human being that is very animalistic, that has desires, that has ego, that has this egotistic drives, and that's very physical and material, and we say, hold on, you're going to be spiritual. So when we say to an angel, you're going to be spiritual, of course, an angel is spiritual. But when we say a human being is going to reach this transcendence, a human being is not going to be stifled and pulled down by the physical and material fabric of his self. He's not going to be pulled down by greed and egotism and selfishness and feelings of what I want and what I need, but he's going to transcend them. He's going to reach up to God and still be this physical being. That is really the biggest joke ever, right? The biggest joke ever, the greatest unexpected thing ever. And that is what Yitzchak is and what all the Jewish people are. So Yitzchak's name teaches us that each and every one of us, as a member of this tribe, has the ability of being a great joke. How can we be the great joke? We can be the greatest joke by defying what would be expected of us, by going against the grain, by changing things around, by not giving in to what we would expect to give in, our temptations, our desires, our physicality, but transcend it and become so much more. So Yitzchak is born, and right before Yitzchak is born, we said another thing that the angels came was to talk about the destruction of Sodom. Sodom was where Avram's nephew Lot was, and any of you ever visited in Israel, the whole Dead Sea area, where supposedly like the whole Sodom, so nothing grows there, right? Nothing can grow there. So this is where the destruction of Sodom takes place. So Avram hears from the angels about the destruction of Sodom, and what does he do? Like any good Jewish negotiator, he bargains. He says, hold on, God, hold on. And very sternly bargains with God. He says, God, how can you destroy the good together with the bad if you find 50 people, 50 righteous people there? Will you not destroy Sodom? And God agrees. And then he goes down and he says, okay, well, what about if there's 40? Right? And God agrees. What if there's 30? And he goes all the way down to 10, which was the very populated place. So that means that there would only have to be like one in each city, basically. He says, if you find 10 people in that whole area, will you not destroy them? And God agrees. And something that we can learn from this negotiations and this going down to just 10 people in this highly populated area is, we often look at our world, and sometimes we don't look at our world as getting better. We see it's getting worse. And this response from God is that if there's only 10 people, I'll save it. Meaning God is looking at each and every one of us. Maimonides tells us we should look at the world as a scale. At the scale that there's half good and half bad. And our action is going to tip the scale. So is our action going to be a positive one, or is our action going to be a negative one? Because so often we look at our own actions and we say, what difference does it make? I'm little me. Who am I in the grand fabric of the world? What difference is my little action going to do? Or what difference is me, my person, my little life going to actually make and create? And God says to us, hold on, look at the destruction of Sodom. If there was just one action, one person, one individual that could have tipped the scale, the whole thing could have been completely averted. And if this is true for a negative situation, how much more so is this true for a positive situation? How each of us has the ability of really tipping the scale for the positive. Okay, so we're back to Avram being told about Yitzchak and Yitzchak being born. And then, there's so much information in this parsha, but what I found interesting was after Yitzchak is born, and it says he was already being weaned, Sarah weans him, and at that point she notices that Yishmael Hagar's son, is mocking or doing something negative to him. And the commentaries explain that what was this Yishmael doing? He was either physically trying to harm him, physically trying to kill him, or he was spiritually trying to harm him in the way of affecting him in a negative way. So Sarah perceives this. She sees him, she sees what's going on, and what does she say? Famous words of Sarah? They need to go out. Gareshus ha'ama hazeh, chase away this woman with her son. They're no longer going to be here with my son Yitzchak. How do you feel about that? She had to protect her son. Good. I see you're a good Jewish mother. Exactly. Sarah was able to, but Avram didn't feel that way. Avram didn't feel, she had to protect her son. Avram, we know Avram's the epitome of kindness, and because he's the epitome of kindness, he just couldn't fathom that I should send away my own son from my house. And this is really the one dispute that we have. Avram and Sarah seem to get along so well in every area. The one dispute in the Torah where we see is over this. And it seems like it was a real dispute that God himself had to intervene. And God says, Kol asher tomar lecha Sarah, shma b'kola. Whatever Sarah tells you, listen to her voice. And we actually read this on Rosh Hashanah. We read this whole episode. And I always say, God is telling every man, you want to have a good year? Listen, right? That's the message. Listen to her voice. God is saying to Avram, listen to her voice. Listen to whatever she tells you, because her voice is the voice of prophecy. She's not just saying things because she's feeling my son or that son. She realizes that this son, this Yitzchak, represents the entire Jewish people. And she's taking a zero tolerance, a zero policy, what's it called? Zero tolerance policy towards bullying or towards actually physically harming him in a spiritual way or a physical way. She says, whatever he's ready to do, this is not a healthy environment for my son, and therefore he's got to go. And God himself attests this is what you need to do. Now let's again take a step back at what's going on here. Remember that Abraham and Sarah are on this mission, right? They're on the mission to really transform the world. Abraham was teaching the men, Sarah was teaching the women. They made tremendous amount of inroads in changing the ideology of the time. This was the superpower couple of the world, right? This is the first lady and first man of the world, so to speak, in that they were really transforming how people thought, how people acted. And in order to do that, they had to, no problem. In order to do that, they had to give you okay? Okay. So Avram and Sarah were transforming society. They were teaching about monotheistic beliefs and completely transforming the way that people looked at reality. They were on a mission, right? They were on a mission to really change the world. And you can just imagine, take a step back and think about what Sarah's doing here. She seems to be completely sabotaging her mission. Like, what do you think people are going to say? Look at that. Sarah didn't like Ishmael, her stepson, so she threw him out, completely sabotaging her mission. Avram, who always acts so kindly to everyone, but look at what's really going on. Could you imagine the gossip columns at the time? Like, they'd have a heyday, right? Look at what Avram and Sarah, they pretend to be doing ... and look at what they really do when they're behind closed doors. And yet, Sarah didn't flinch. She didn't flinch. If this is what's going to happen, so this is what's going to happen. But I need to work on protecting my environment. I need to work on protecting my child. This is the future of the Jewish people. And therefore, I'm not going to stand for this. He's ready to harm him physically or spiritually. My job is to stand by my convictions, by what I know is true, and by what I know is real. And to this, God says, Shema b'kola, listen to her voice. Don't be constrained by your personal disposition. Avram, you're a man of kindness. Know when to go above your kindness, go beyond your kindness. Know when to constrict that kindness and do something that needs to be done in the moment that's completely out of your comfort zone. Know how to do something that might even sabotage your mission if this is what needs to be done. Shema b'kola, listen to her voice. And I think those words, Shema b'kola, is really a guiding light for all of us in our own lives. You know, how often do we know of something that we know is important to be done, and yet we look at, what is everyone else going to think? How's everyone else going to react? How are people going to react? How's my family going to react? How are my neighbors or friends going to react? What are they going to think of this, if I do so and so? But you know it's important for you. Yeah, but how's it going to look to others? Right? Do you ever hear yourself saying that? How are other people going to react? Huh? You stopped doing that a long time. Good. They say that when you're in your 20s, you think everyone's looking at you. When you get a little older, you realize no one's looking at you. No one even cares about you, right? But often we worry about what's public opinion going to be thinking or feeling, or how is this going to affect my career, my job, my this, my that, whatever the situation is. We take external situations and considerations into account before doing what we know is good for ourselves or our families, right? How are they going to look at me? How are people going to look at me if I start keeping kosher? Like, am I going to be looked at as religious? What are people going to say if I stop working on Shabbat? And whatever the example is, how are people going to look at me if I put my child in this school? You know, will they, even though I know that this might be the best situation for them, how will people react to that? How will even my family react? And this is where we need to say, Shema b'kolo, listen to her voice. Listen to that inner voice within you that knows, that is following your convictions. Follow them till the end, because this is what is important for you and your family. They do this. They talk about this test that's done with advertising, where they give this example of a cage where there was a whole bunch of monkeys. There was 10 monkeys in the cage, and in the cage there was also a ladder. And anytime one of the monkeys tried to climb the ladder, they would spray all the monkeys with water. So what happened was, all the monkeys stopped. Whichever monkey wanted to climb that ladder, they stopped him, and they didn't allow him to do it, because they knew that we would all be sprayed. So the monkeys are now in the cage with none of them climbing the ladder, because they know if we climb the ladder, we'll all be sprayed, right? 10 monkeys are there, 10 monkeys know not to climb the ladder. What do the researchers do then? They start taking out one monkey at a time. So they take out one monkey and replace that monkey with a new monkey. Now this monkey starts climbing the ladder, and the others don't allow him to. And slowly, the entire group is replaced with new monkeys, 10 new monkeys, that none of them have been sprayed upon, but these monkeys know that we can't climb the ladder because no one let them climb the ladder. And this is a paradigm that's used in the field of marketing, that if you can get enough people to believe in your product, you'll have more and more people just go automatically buying that product because everyone buys it. I'm doing it because everyone else does, right? Once you reach that threshold where enough people believe in that product, how you get them there through influencers or through advertisement or whatever means you use is irrelevant. But once you get to that point, people will stop questioning it, right? Of course I have to buy that brand name because that's the best brand name, right? You stop questioning even if it's worth the extra money, if it's better quality. You stop questioning any of that because you're in this mode of frame of mind that this must be the best. And that's really human nature in all areas of life, and even more so when it comes to our emotional and spiritual welfare. That there are times when we have to say, I'm not looking at what everyone else is doing. I'm not following the crowd. I'm not being convinced even by my own personal dispositions that are holding me back, like Avraham's kindness. Kindness is a wonderful trait, right? But when used properly. And sometimes we have to evaluate, is this kindness being used in a positive way? Or sometimes the greatest kindness could be the greatest cruelty, because that kindness is turning into cruelty. By Avram leaving Ishmael in his home, it would have been the greatest cruelty to himself and to Yitzchak and to his family and to the future of the Jewish people. So the message, I think, of this week's Torah portion is when we want to reach a high revelation of God, when we want to reach that Vayeira, that God in our life, when we want to have that level of divine consciousness where we feel God in our lives, we need to be following Shema B'Kola. Listen to that inner voice, that soul within us. Every single one of us has a soul within us. And that soul usually knows what we need to do in specific situations. And sometimes it's the outside voices, our own even outside voices, that are clamoring against it, that are stopping it, preventing it from actually actualizing what we can be doing. But if we want to reach that Vayeira, Shema B'Kola, listen to the voice, listen to that voice that's within you, and that allows you to reach higher and to accomplish what needs to be done. So what I want to do now is, we spoke about transcendence, about Yitzchak being transcendent, about this joke of the Jewish people. And we spoke about listening and following your convictions. So I want you to write one time that you actually listened to that inner voice, despite what was going on around you, and you reached this unexpected, this like a joke is unexpected. You did something that was completely unexpected because everything was saying, don't do it, and you persevered and you actually did it. You actually followed that Shema B'Kola in your life. So write an example of one time where you disregarded outside opinion, disregarded the expected path for you, and actually took a change, took a turn, and did something that you're proud of. That makes you feel that you listened to that inner voice and you did something that was listening to something deep within yourself.